Pharmacy Week continues here in Jamaica until this Saturday as we recognize the invaluable contributions pharmacists and technicians make to patient care in the healthcare facilities. We'll tell you more about the week and the work of our pharmacists and other heroes in our health sector. Welcome to another Wednesday with the Jamaica Magazine team. I'm Theodore Henry. Some health talk after the news.
The Disabilities Act will protect the rights of all persons with disabilities. And here's a great teaching moment. Every person with a disability, like a deaf or hard of hearing child, for example, has the right to an education with accessible facilities and the support they need. In this case, it would be a teacher who can use the language of the deaf, which is sign language. Visit jcpdja.com. A message from the JCPD, an agency of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, November 24. The House of Representatives has extended the states of public emergency declared in 7 police divisions last week until February 2022. They are the Tri-Parish region of Westmoreland, St. James and Hanover, as well as St. Andrew South and Kingston Western, Central and Eastern in the corporate area. The House approved the measure during Tuesday's sitting. As he lobbied for the extension, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said the SOEs were necessary to curtail the wanton killings by criminals and internal gang feuds.
We have an emergency. We have criminals who are brazen and who are resourced. Madam Speaker, when we have a situation where an internationally sponsored peace training event is taking place in Westmoreland, and someone, a youngster, can walk into that training session in the open view of everyone and kill another youngster. Isn't that an emergency?
Prime Minister Holness used the platform to refute claims that the SOEs were being used to give extraordinary powers to the military and limit the rights of persons.
We went through every process to ensure that we train the police in human rights, and I don't think that the country should be deprived of the use of these tools when they are clearly defined as to how they should be used, and especially when it is clear that this government is making every effort to ensure that the rights of citizens are protected.
In other news, affordable, sustainable and climate-resilient housing construction across the island will soon be bolstered. That's thanks to Tuesday's unveiling of the winners of the state's low-cost housing design competition. Over 300 designs were submitted for multifamily homes and 1, 2 and 3 bedroom solutions. The winning designs in the 4 categories will be used to fast-track projects under the National Social Housing Program and other housing initiatives spearheaded by the government.
I'm hoping that from this design competition and government building out these solutions right across Jamaica, we can then start to stimulate and inspire people who are building to change the way in which they are building. And that will have a signal effect right across the country.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is defending the National Housing Trust against what he terms as unfair criticism of the agency's mandate. There has been recent uproar about the pricing of the NHT's New Kingston development, for which units are on sale for between $27.7 and $37.7 million. In response, Mr. Holness argues that the agency has a duty to all contributors, not only those at the low to middle income level. He adds that the trust will be spending $57.7 billion on 8,500 units, 7,000 of which will be completed by March 31 next year.
That represents about 80 units of 8,500 units, which are all targeted. We gave a directive to the NHT that 95% of their portfolio must be directed towards a price point $8 million and below. And so the NHD has basically restructured its affairs to support the development of affordable and low-income housing. But it does have an obligation still to contributors, whether you are high-income or low-income contributors.
Approximately 400,000 grades 1 to 13 students and 15,000 teachers in public schools are set to benefit from the newly launched National Coding in Schools program. Education Minister Favour Williams launched the program on Friday along with Prime Minister Andrew Holness. She says the program will prepare students to compete in an increasingly technology-driven world.
The objective of the program is to develop skills such as logical and critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, teamwork, mathematics, and to instill confidence in students through coding. To support this, a coding/computer applications class will be incorporated in the regular school curriculum.
For his part, Prime Minister Holness says as Jamaica seeks to become a digital society, the need for coders is increasing.
Jamaica already has the building blocks to become the Silicon Valley of the region, such as proximity to the largest market in the world. We have creative, imaginative, and a young population. And we now need to turn this into an asset. We need the builders, the coders. They are the builders of the digital society.
The launch follows a successful pilot program by the Education Ministry on May 7. It was executed through a partnership with software firm Amber Innovations Group Limited and was conducted virtually in 20 schools with approximately 2,000 students in grades 4 and 9. For this full rollout, telecommunications company Digicel has now partnered with the Amber Group to co-sponsor the program. Administrative staff at the Jamaica Bauxite Mining, JBM Limited, are now operating in a newly constructed building valued at approximately 120 million Jamaican dollars. The building, which is located at Reynolds Pier, was handed over last Friday by Mining Minister Robert Montague. It contains a conference room and 7 offices, in addition to a CCTV monitoring room, a lobby for visitors, kitchenette, bathroom facility, stationery room, a sick bay, a 50 kVA standby generator, and a 188 square foot warehouse.
An agreement was made between the Port Authority of Jamaica and the Jamaica Bauxite Mines Limited to relocate the JBM's administrative office to the western side of the property to accommodate the enlargement of the eastern side of the property, which is more on the shipping business. I firmly believe that facilities such as this new administrative building encourage better staff performance and overall well-being.
Construction of the building was undertaken by the Port Authority of Jamaica, and the Reynolds Pier is used by both the Port Authority and the JBM for docking cargo vessels and cruise ships. And finally, portfolio responsibility for Clarendon Alumina Production Limited, CAP, is now under the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Prime Minister Andrew Holness gave the directive for the entity's transfer from the Ministry of Transport and Mining. The decision follows calls for the government to provide financial support to CAP because of the separated nature of the Jamalco joint venture and unfavorable global market conditions. Prime Minister Holness says it is important that the transformation of Jamalco to a combined joint venture continues without disruption and that financial risks are eliminated. The Ministry of Finance has been providing finance and strategic guidance to the Jamalco Incorporation project, and several milestones have already been achieved. The government currently holds 45% interest in the Jamalco refinery through CAP, while the Noble Group owns the other 55%. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
Healthcare professionals are critical to the overall functioning of any society, and surely we've seen the magnitude of their importance during this pandemic. We recently met with some of our nurses who share their stories of working throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
Your first glance, and it's quite easy to describe a distinctive, often immaculate and largely undecorated attire. Quite mundane for many, but their lives are far from the mundane. It's one that's quite astonishing most days, while other days come with its own bit of terrifying events. Really, there's nothing humdrum about their jobs.
Hi, my name is Dominique Millen and I have been a nurse for 13 years. I chose nursing as a career because as a teenager I experienced a devastating loss. At the time I could not cope with the feelings I was experiencing, so I saw a way I could help the helpless. As a nurse, I love being a part of a medical team that goes above and beyond to save patients to life. It is amazing to see the things that people do when you work together to achieve one goal.
My name is Lillian Cook. I'm an acting ward manager, a registered specialist nurse working at the Bustamante Hospital for Children for over 20 years. The word nurse to me means caring, helping those who are sick, and the greatest pleasure is to bring them back to health. When I was a child, growing up, I wanted to become a nurse. And at about the age 11, I read about Florence Nightingale. And that story was so inspiring, The Lady with the Lamp. And I decided in my mind from there that that's a profession I would choose for life.
So many of them stood and continue to stand as the backbone of the frontline workers in a pandemic that we knew too little about, while dealing with unprecedented strains and wounds that not even their gauze or surgical tapes could ever cover.
I remember the first time I heard about the COVID-19 virus hitting the shores of Jamaica. I knew this was it. My name is Norvelyn Mendez, and I have been a nurse for 14 years, and I have never experienced anything quite like the pandemic.
Working as a nurse during the pandemic at the hospital, it is very overwhelming to see that our medical resources have been stretched thin, and it is very devastating to see that family members can't be with the patients here.
Working in the pandemic has been very taxing emotionally and physically. The work demand becomes very hectic. You have to show up, you have to give the same amount of care, irrespective of the fact that the patient has a contagious illness. You work long hours, longer than normal, because sometimes there are staff members who are on quarantine or who have been exposed to the virus. And so you must now sometimes double up your time in order to give the care that the patients require.
I lost a colleague to COVID-19 last September. It was very, very difficult for us as colleagues to bear the news, feel the pain, especially when that person was so warmed. It was panic-driven. And when I heard that people were just dying, as if there was nothing that could spare life, it was really panicky for us. But when it came to our shores and we saw that people could really recover, yes, it touched us when we saw loved ones died, when you care for persons and the end result is death. But we were much happy when we start getting positive results of people who come in, treated, and return home.
Having lost a patient to COVID-19 has been emotional for me because the patient would have been in hospital over a period of time. And so after having been in hospital over a period of time, you develop that patient-care relationship, and so the patient would appear like a family member. And so when the patient dies, a part of you is affected.
Despite the losses, despite the faces of patients far too many to even count or recollect, Persons like these continue to respond to the call to save lives daily, hourly, and with every ticking second of a clock.
So the lifelong lesson that I have learned as a nurse is that life is very fragile. You have it this minute and the next minute it is gone. And that is the reason I believe that each person should find the time to spend the time with those they love. Let them know in every way possible how much they mean to them, because life is fragile.
What motivates me being a nurse is that I can make a difference in a patient's life. I grew up with a strong family background of strong women. They always say, you turn up and show up and give your best.
I did not choose nursing. Nursing chose me. My advice to those who would like to pursue a career in becoming a nurse is that nursing is fun. It's a fun profession. You are never ever doing the same thing every day. If you are passionate about helping people to restore their health, to preserve life, to promote health, if you are passionate about humanity, this is a profession for you.
Even if I'm tired, when I go home in the evening or at every time my shift ends, whether it's a night shift that ends in the morning, I just have this strong, compassionate feeling to continue my work. And I always look forward for the life that I'm going to touch tomorrow.
Unless you're in that room, you have no idea what we do. But I love my job.
I was meant to be a nurse.
I knew what I was getting into, but I chose it. And if I should start all over again, I will make the same choice. I'll nurse for life.
So here's a space where these healthcare providers are notorious for working long, grueling hours, giving of themselves, working tirelessly to allow someone, anyone, to see into the promise of tomorrow. A nurse's task isn't easy. So how about showing them some appreciation as we go about our daily lives?
Response to health conditions such as diabetes requires personal attention. It means there are things you can do to control and help these issues, especially in the early stages. Here's a look at how you can treat diabetic conditions, along with some preventative measures to follow.
Diabetes is a serious chronic lifestyle disease affecting millions of people over the world and continues to increase. Diabetes affects how your body turns food into energy. It is a disease in which your blood glucose or blood sugar levels are too high, and glucose comes from the food you eat. Insulin is a hormone that helps the glucose get into your cells to give energy. Sometimes your body doesn't make enough or any at all, doesn't make any insulin, and so it doesn't use the insulin well. Glucose then stays in your blood and doesn't reach your cells. Over time, having too much glucose in your blood can cause complications. Example, situations with the kidney, heart disease, and so on. Although diabetes has no cure, there are steps you can take to manage your diabetes and stay healthy.
It is through lifestyle that we manage the risk of diabetes. Those behaviors include increased physical activity, a healthy diet, routine health checks, and strict adherence to medication. The Ministry will be championing the cause of persons living with diabetes. We have updated our clinical management guidelines, which is now available on our website, and we will be working on increasing access to testing through the introduction of point-of-care testing. This methodology of testing is the gold standard for monitoring and control of diabetes. Our agency, the National Health Fund, will continue to support persons through the provision of diabetic medication and supplies, and I encourage persons with diabetes to enroll in the NHF card program to access this benefit.
The person with diabetes should really have an opportunity to sit down with a trained clinician who is able to help them to understand the concepts of diabetes self-management, education, and support. There are 4 core areas the patient must begin to understand. How and when to take medication. That's the first one. If you take insulin, then you need to know how does your insulin work and how do you eat in relation to the insulin. Then there are the people who have type 2 diabetes, which commonly start off with education on activity and just healthy nutrition. And then we add 1 of 5 classes of oral agents. And then we teach them how to make food, how to eat food. Also, we think of things like target blood pressure. Is your weight healthy, or do you need to lose a little weight? And most importantly, how do you feel? What is your quality of life? All of this is what we focus on. Also, when you get your lab work done, what is your hemoglobin A1C? The target should be 7% or less. Keep that number in your mind. Diabetes damages the feet, the kidney, and the eyes at first, and then eventually we also find it can cause coronary vascular disease too. But for foot care, the person with diabetes every day, you wash your feet, wash them properly. Dry your feet, dry between the toes. Moisturize your feet, but do not put moisturizer between the toes. Make sure that you wear cotton socks, right? If you're going to have your toes cut by somebody trained who knows how to cut them. Examine your feet every day. Do not walk barefoot. Please, please, please do not walk barefooted, because if you injure or cause trauma to the feet, you may not feel it because your diabetes has damaged the nerves to the feet. And finally, when you buy shoes that are comfortable and that you can wear without causing blisters or trauma to the feet. Now we have research that shows that I can prevent the eye damage, the kidney damage, the foot damage, and the amputations by just keeping my blood glucoses under control and taking care of myself.
There's no such thing as a diabetic diet, but it's all about how much I eat, the timing of my meals. So it's your portion sizes is what is important. Now, what we do recommend is that persons eat at least 3 balanced meals per day and small snacks. Snacks usually mean smaller, more nourishing meals, which we usually recommend that it be your fruits, your vegetables, or you can also use your nuts. Each meal or snack should contain protein because we need it to be balanced as well. Each meal should contain at least your protein and your fat. And we also want them to select a variety of foods from all the food groups. So there is some recommendations about the amount of fruits that you should eat per day. We usually say 2 to 3 servings. We want you to include a variety of vegetables daily. We also want you to include more peas, beans, and nuts in your daily meals. Reduce your intake of salty and processed foods, and to reduce your intake of fats and oils, and that of sugary foods and drinks. You aim for foods that have high sources of fiber, such as your whole wheat bread, whole grain rice, flour. More if you're growing provisions, they will give you fiber, right? And that will slow down the rate at which your body breaks down the food, so you won't have a rapid increase in your blood sugar levels versus if you eat foods that are low in these added fibers. When you're having alcohol as a person living with diabetes is not to have it on an empty stomach, because it gives the risk of lowering your blood sugar. And also what we want you to do is that once you have diabetes, we do not really recommend the mixed drinks, so as to say, because they usually have a sweetened base. For women, it's usually you can have a drink per day, and for men is no more than 2 drinks. And what is a drink? Usually for beer, it's not more than 12 ounces. And for like a shot, is usually a shot, which is about 1.5 ounces. And for wine, recommendation is usually about 5 ounces thereabout.
There are several researches that have shown that physical activity, when done properly, for persons who are diabetic, again you heard it, allows you to use up glucose. For children, the recommendation is at least 60 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate to vigorous activity, and it must be a combination of muscle and bone strengthening activity. That's the recommendation for our children. For adults, it's at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week to get some health benefit, meaning increased circulation, reduce stress. And for the elderly, it's at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. If you're a diabetic patient, these are some of the activities that are very good for you. Swimming, jogging, dancing, these activities, they're not very vigorous. You maintain them at a low to moderate pace, and it's a very effective way of managing and controlling your blood glucose or your blood sugar. If you are going to start a physical activity program, that you check with your doctor before you start, because if you have a condition, if you're diabetic, hypertensive, you have any other medical condition, your doctor will determine the intensity level, the type of activities that you can do.
Persons living with diabetes mellitus have multiple psychosocial issues related to diabetes management and its complications even before COVID. And there's an entity called diabetic distress, which refers to the negative emotions such as feeling hopeless, angry, or frustrated that persons who are diagnosed with diabetes experience, especially if they lack social support. I must mention we have the mental health helpline, which is 888-639-5433, or simply remember 888-NEW-LIFE, which is a 24-hour, 7 days per week psychological support produced by psychologists. When you call this number, they can provide emotional support for you. If you are feeling any form of emotional distress, they can provide support for you, and where you need additional help, they will direct you to additional help.
We did mention that it is Pharmacy Week, a good opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of our Jamaican pharmacists. So in today's Hear This, we'll share a bit more on the week and its importance. Here goes. Firstly, this year Pharmacy Week is being observed under the theme, Pharmacists, Promoting Excellence, Empowering the Nation. Secondly, the week was created to raise awareness among patients and pharmacists about their role on the healthcare team. Third, later today, the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica will be hosting a public forum and public debate on the Data Protection Act. And fourth, this year the Pharmaceutical Society of Jamaica will also be giving back to its members by purchasing a laptop and a refrigerator for a health center. Today, the Jamaica Magazine team applauds all our pharmacists and thanks them for all their hard work and consistency, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. You're all indeed important to our country and its vision of becoming the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. This is where we close out today's show. Thanks for sticking through the Jamaica Magazine journey. A refresher of yesterday's journey and others can be had through the JIS's YouTube channel. You may also want to visit our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more information. From all of us here at the JIS, I'm Theodore Henry. See you soon.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.